So what we want to hear from all of you, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, is what we're doing wrong, what we need to do right, what happens when your resume leaves your hands and gets in someone else's hands, and how we can make sure that we market ourselves, because that's what this is all about, is marketing you in order for you to be able to market somebody else when you work for a team or a school or something like that. So, Mo, would you start and introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Monique Bowman. I'm currently with the Big Ten Conference as the Director of Digital and Social Media. Started here in November, and prior to this position, I was with Ohio State Athletics for 3 years as, I forgot my title already, that's sad, but I did social media and website, and helped out Carson a little bit with stuff with him. Some of my previous positions include Fogler Moortown, which is a PR agency in Columbus, President's Athletic Conference, Ohio Northern, United Soccer Coaches Association. Yeah, I think that's the majority of my background.
Great. Danny Campbell, welcome.
Good morning, everyone. I'm talking to you from Boise, Idaho. I have started my venture in college athletics at Columbus State Community College, where I'm a proud alumnus of the junior college there in Columbus, but have migrated to multiple institutions. I've worked on the NCAA Division I, Division II, Division III level, and now in my first month as a director of athletic communications at the College of Idaho, which is here in suburban Boise, Idaho, in a town called Caldwell, and about a population about the size of the Ohio State campus. So it's a small community, but looking forward to sharing with you guys the insights as someone usually on the other side of the resume, the one reviewing it, looking at it as a hiring individual, but also just in athletic communications as a background.
Welcome. Mary Kate, welcome back.
Yeah, I'm Mary Kate. I'm the Director of Creative Services in Loyola University Chicago's athletic department. Previously, I've worked at the University of Miami in Florida, and I did my undergrad at Purdue and worked in their athletic department. I've just started recently in the last year, been on hiring committees, review committees, and hiring people.
Fantastic. Carson, you're live and in person in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, I'm surrounded by the ghosts of the people on Zoom. Hello, everyone. Carson Reeder. Right now, I'm manager of digital advertising for the Columbus Crew here in town. Before that, as Mo said, we worked together in the Ohio State Athletic Department. Before that, I was with the Columbus Blue Jackets, where Nicole and I first met, doing digital social media there. Before that, I was at College of the Holy Cross out in Worcester, Massachusetts, doing all digital marketing there. Graduated from here. My favorite color is gray, and I like pop punk music.
Awesome footwear, in case anyone hasn't noticed.
Yeah, I gotta clean these things. They're gross.
So, right before I came here, actually last night, I was at the Blue Jackets game, and in the intermission, I looked at the resume template on Word. And I looked at it, and to be honest, it really resonated with me because it was the same resume template that I used when I was looking for a job, when computers first came into actual fruition, and I am really that old, in like I think my first computer was like 1988 or so, 89. So, what is wrong with resumes nowadays? What are some of the things that we think that we know about resumes and they're not actually real? Maybe Mo, you could get us started with that.
Sure. So this is more so my personal opinion, but I believe we are kind of caught in between old school and new school right now. And so, so old school, it's, the basic template, don't make it fancy, don't showcase your creative prowess. But then you have this new school, and then, some of us are looking for how are you laying things out? How are you promoting yourself? If you can promote yourself, if you can promote yourself, you can promote, our organization. So I think we're kind of caught in between there. But I will say, someone is okay. But I will say there's an opportunity for, students coming out, young professionals, to have to balance between, the new school and old school. So, the
Oh my God.
the HR people, they're looking for, are you hitting the marks? Are you hitting, what the qualifications that they're looking for? New school, by the time it gets to, the people who are doing the actual hiring, or
JT.
we'll be working with, rather, I should say, we are kind of looking for not only substance, but, how are you presenting the substance? So, but yeah, when it comes to what the things I see, not tailoring your resume to the position. Yes, it takes work, but you need a job. Tailoring your experience to the position. And then also revising what you've done to market, tell your story, but also make sure you're including the organization's story in with your resume. It's a tough job. It takes a lot of time, but once you get it, you'll get it.
Thanks, Mo. Sorry for like the
We don't know what that-
interruptions.
We're trying to figure out what that noise is, so bear with us, but Carson, why don't you jump in?
Yeah, before I start, if you're tuning in via Zoom, can you just make sure you're on mute? So we can all hear each other, I guess. But anyway, as Mo was saying, we are caught kind of in the old school and new school, as Nicole said earlier, before we started this whole shebang. My high school resume, which is definitely old school, is on the website. It's gross. It would not get me a job today, but you can see all my high school extracurriculars if you want. But I think that the main point is looking at the job to which you are applying, as Mo just said, looking at the job description, looking at the bullet points of what like the minimum job requirements are, or what you're going to be doing at the job, looking at your experiences and then matching it up to what they're looking for, so that you can prove, at least on a piece of paper, why you should be considered for the job. Another thing I want to point out is that if you have a portfolio, which, if you're in video, photo, graphic design, I highly recommend you have one. Plenty of different platforms you can do that on: Behance, Wix, like wherever. Look into it, put your work online, so that those who are hiring you have a one-stop shop visual representation of what you're capable of. For me, and I think Mo can attest to this because we were on a few hiring searches together, you can work your way to the top of the pile and out of the pile just based on the piece of paper that you submit. But one thing that is important is that the portfolio you have can then speak to the type of work you do, which is going to get your foot in the door. So making sure that that is clear, evident for the hiring manager to be able to find. Mary Kate and Danny might have similar opinions or different. That's why we're all here, so we can provide different perspectives to you, and then you can take with that what you will to go on into the workforce. So I'm going to stop talking and open up for others.
Danny, I was wondering if you could, thank you so much, Carson. What do you see when you first get a resume? What are you looking for, and what are you often seeing?
I think the main thing, as I've reviewed resumes over the last 20 years of being in college athletics, is just how do you utilize the space? Are you focusing the space, just to, regurgitate what was in your job description? Or, as Carson just talked about, what are those distinguishing characteristics? Once you put in your resume for that job, you're a candidate. It's your social media presence. It's how you articulate it, if it's proper grammar, if it's, punctuation, if it's, not matching, having the wrong colors. It's interesting in my current position, how when we just recently hired a person, the person used the wrong school color. And it was a very much of a turnoff to not you think our hiring committee makeup of coaches and student athletes would not have thought about color being a big deal, but it really turned people off. And like Carson just said, it puts your resume in a no pile just as fast as you thought it would be in a yes pile, just because of what you've accomplished. And I think that's, as someone that continues to review resumes, I provide that, we'd be glad to provide that feedback or service to anyone out there that's watching this webinar or listening. There's a lot of different resources out there, but the thing is, you're an individual and you can stand out. You are a brand, you represent something. So when you're putting together an online portfolio, a resume, remember, you're a brand. It's the Nike philosophy, just do it. And I'll leave you with that.
Mary Kate, Jacob's jumping in with a question here. Thanks so much, Jacob. What are the most common red flags that you see in resumes that are easily avoidable? And it's funny, Danny, you just mentioned about the colors, and both Carson and I cringed, which is so funny. Like, our immediate reaction was something that we would know wouldn't work, but so many people don't know what doesn't work.
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest red flags is like typos on like proofread and then proofread again and then send to 10 people to have proofread. And I feel like it's so embarrassing when there are typos in the first part of your resume. Just please proofread. Also, if you're going to have links on there, make sure they work. That, I've come across very recently, when we're applying to jobs and we download resumes.
Please be quiet, please.
And just, we go to click their link to their portfolio, which is so important. Like Carson mentioned, we want to see these people's works when you're hiring for a creative role, and then the link doesn't work, or, it goes to a page no longer found. Make sure that it's and that those links really work. And that goes along with proofreading too. Send it to your friend, say, hey, can you click the link? Make sure it takes you to like this specific page. Those are super easily avoidable. Just make sure you proofread. And don't be too vague. I feel like that's a mistake I see commonly as well, especially from like college age students. They'll send me a resume and the first couple of statements under their first experience, I have no idea what they actually do for the role. I'm trying to guess based on what statements that they have on there. So be really specific. Don't be too vague.
That's a great point. There seems to be a dispute, and I've talked to career services about this. We're still doing the resume that is, your name at the top and your work, your education at the top if you just graduated. Then you have your listing of work experience with your bulleted points, and then of course references available upon request at the end. But then when I go online and I search for resumes, none of them look like that. Like, they have a rail, a lot of them have pictures, they're using different colors. So what's right? How creative should we be, and how should we set ourselves apart? But yet,
Danny, do you polish your head?
what do we do about when you have resumes scanned? We all hear these horror stories that your resume just gets scanned and no one actually looks at it. So Mo, maybe you could start.
Yeah. So again, I think this kind of goes back to the old school, new school thing. So one thing for me, when I was doing my search, and applying, I had two resumes. So I had one resume that went into the HR system, and it was the basic, layout and everything, so that the HR system can read it. And then I had my slightly more creative version that I would, maybe have printouts, or when I would follow up, to check on the status of my application, I would send that version instead. So I think that might be helpful, especially because, the first layer is HR. So you have to get through their system and get through that process before you make it to the committee or your potentially future boss or whatever. So that might be a little bit more helpful. And then when it comes to like layout, it's tough because when you're first coming out, like, you have, college experience, which is great, but, a lot of people are looking for, what else have you done? So I would try to strike a balance between like looking at executive resume layouts and like basic layouts with the education up top and so on and so forth. but like, look at the executive resume layouts. Like, how are executives laying out their resume if they're still using a resume? You know, it's the, not objective, what's the like their summary, executive summary. And then, you know, then they kind of go into, you know, their work experience. So try to tell your story in a way that's above the level that you're applying for. And I think that will help kind of guide how you want to lay out your resume.
Danny, what are you thinking about that?
I would just piggyback to what Mo just talked about, is having, you know, that resume that gets you in the door, having those keywords, because more and more HR organizations are going to an automated review system. It's not 2 sets of eyes on the resume anymore. It's a computer that's tracking and looking for certain keywords, or buzzwords is the word I like to use. What is creating that buzz to get you that next stage, but being comfortable enough to studying that job description and understanding, that your accomplishment back in 1998 may not be relevant, or 2008, but also, for example, the way you communicate to an HR person, they have a lot more of a legal standpoint. So they have a checklist. They're looking for certain boxes to be, to get your foot in the door, but you have to support that with relevant examples. Using present verbs, things like that are very, transparent on both resumes. I think that's the main red flag I've seen, is that people think of everything in a past tense, or I've already done that. They don't show that, hey, I can grow as a professional or grow as a person in a role like this. And this is how I developed. I may have started as an assistant director or a student assistant. And by the time I left, I had a sport responsibility or a project that I was a contributor, but then later on I became, the chief designer for, or something like that. I think those are key, key strategies that you want to make sure you articulate in a resume, but you also I've seen, in my reviews, red flags, not showing that progression either, and just putting everything in a past tense standpoint.
And if I can, jump back in, also consider your brand beyond your resume. So what is your LinkedIn profile looking like? What is your, like Carson said, what is your portfolio looking like? What is your social media presence looking like? No one will say this, and it's not a part of the official background check, but we do look at all those things. I mean, let's be real. We want to make sure that you are a good fit for our team. So look at your entire brand, not only what you are on a piece of paper, but what your portfolio is looking like. Is it consistent with your LinkedIn profile? Is it consistent with your Twitter account, if it's public, if Instagram, so on and so forth. So just keep those things in mind. Not that you have to guard yourself or not put your real authentic self out there, but just be mindful of what that could be perceived as you're going through the process of applying for jobs.
Especially if you're going to put links to those things on your resume. If you're putting your LinkedIn URL or if you're putting your Twitter, make sure it's up to date. If that's how you want to market yourself, you want to make sure that that's the best version of yourself, not a Twitter account you created in 2015 that you haven't used and has 2 posts. Just delete it. No, don't put it on there. It doesn't need to be on there. Then have the HR person do the work of actually going to look, oh, can't find it, what have you. But put it on there. Be intentional with what you're putting on there.
Great point. Andrew, what was your question?
Yeah, I just had a quick question about skills on a resume. I think experiences are what our resume like skills. So would you rather see the skills embedded throughout the resume, talking about different strengths that you have or experiences, this is skills I have, this experience, or would you rather see a separate skills section entirely?
So Andrew's asking about skills in your resume, and he's asking, would you like to see a specific section as to where your skills are devoted, or you want to see that layered throughout the entire resume?
Can I start? I'll
Yes,
take it
Carson,
just
go
real
start.
quick. I think Danny brought up a good point earlier. I think on mine, I have my own certain skills section, but I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it as long as they're there. Because as Danny said earlier, like HR systems are becoming more automated, not to get like too technical here with everyone in the room, but and at home. They're looking for those skills, like the actual words of the skills that are being taken from the job description, be taken from like the requirements for the job. So at least as long as you have them in there and they're easy to find. So as Mary Kay was saying, having that, you know, as a bullet that's clear and concise under your experience, and it's not like this kind of murky, weird, the person can't make out exactly what you did. As long as it's pretty evident what you do, if you're having it in bullet points, great. If you're having its own particular section, that's great too, because then it's easier to find. But I think it really goes to the type of job you are applying for, as Mo is alluding to.
I did want to, I'm sharing our screen now so that we can see Carson's resume. So this is Carson's resume.
Probably should have blocked out my parents' address and phone number, but it's cool.
It's okay, we're not gonna, we'll block that out. So we can see, you know, this is a pretty, how many of you have a resume that looks something like this? Okay, that's okay, because we're not, there's no judgment, it's a no judgment zone. All right, so this is Carson's original resume.
I actually haven't even looked at that.
I'm not
since-
sure if this
since
is
then.
his, Danny, so here's Carson's new resume. So what do you notice is the difference, and Danny, maybe you could tell us what you think about the difference, what you think about this resume that Carson has here.
Yeah, Danny, tear mine apart, man.
Tear it apart, Danny.
Well, my shredder is not in function. It's not fully charged. We're in a little different time zone here, so I guess I'll blame it on the coffee here. But the main thing that I think that stands out for Carson is that he's used white space effectively. Because obviously if someone prints this out, there's space for them to make notes, but also a way to leave feedback. Like say he has that bullet point, for example, where he connected data between departments. Then you go back down to what he did at Holy Cross. It's very, strong, adjectives. As a director, that would be the thing that is missing. It doesn't talk about directing anything. It doesn't, but obviously as a director of something, he had to direct something, and that's not. And I think that's part of the thing that's missing, from that standpoint. But obviously, if you look at other examples, this is one of my consulting clients that is currently in the job market. And the thing is, when we work together on the resume, what we do is we tailor a lot of what is in these bullet points towards the job description, because it gets it past the HR department. And then when you go, and as you can see, this person has more than 10 years of experience. So that's why it rolls over into 2 pages. Sometimes I think people get caught up in length, but that's why I go back to that idea of white space, being flexible enough and comfortable enough. Here we also have the different softwares, because that takes it off of, hey, we think the person has these qualifications because they've applied. Well, why not spell that out for them? But those are, obviously, the nice thing is, but as you can see, both Carson and this applicant here have utilized the institutional logos of past employers or their current employer. It just resonates that, hey, they, another eye-catching material. I think that's as you work more with creative people, I think, hey, you expect them to show, it showcases that creativity to them. And I commend Carson for his ability, for his notable numbers over there. Because if you just put in those numbers at the top of your resume, it could get lost in the shuffle. And it's good that you call that out.
Absolutely. Jonathan has a question about, and Mary Kate, maybe you could take this, any particular set of questions you believe we should ask a company when applying or interviewing for a job?
Can you just repeat that one more time? Sorry.
Are there any particular set of questions you believe we should ask a company when applying or interviewing for a job?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, you should absolutely ask questions when you're interviewing. Do not end the interview and just say, okay, have a good day. I personally think it comes across as like, oh, do you like, you must have done really good research or something if you have no questions at all about either the team environment or, anything like that. So for me, if I'm interviewing, I love the questions about, how does your team interact? What is the working environment like? How would you describe it? Anything like that to get a sense of workplace culture. Just because you're going to, especially in sports, you're going to be seeing those people a lot. You're going to be spending a lot of time with those people. And yes, you want to love the work you're doing, but you want to love the people you're doing it with as well. So I would definitely ask questions about the people and the culture. In terms of the actual work, that one's tough. I mean, you want to get a good sense of what your responsibilities really will be. Is there anything missing off the job description that I saw online that I will be doing on the day-to-day? Or what's something you can tell me about other duties as assigned? Because we all know that's a common thing in job descriptions, especially in sports. What's the most common other duty as assigned? But definitely ask questions. And those questions can come from the research that you should always be doing before applying and before interviewing.
Any other questions? So the question is, Dan, you mentioned using keywords or buzzwords. What words should you use? And also maybe what shouldn't you use?
Bunch of swear words. Throw a bunch in there. I'll get you that for sure.
I don't think, I was going to say, that I don't think there's right keywords, but I think the main thing is the tense of them, the verb. From that standpoint, that's what really stands out to me, because I think you're caught up in living in past glory and past, you want to show that you're a forward thinker or progressive and grew in the profession or grew in your position. I think the more you keep things in the past, you're resting on those laurels and not taking yourself or the organization forward as a candidate.
That's a great point. Mo, did you have something to add there?
Thesource.com is my best friend when I'm developing my resume, because I can get into the habit of, okay, created, strategize, just thesource.com. And then again, and going back to looking at the job description, and making sure you're adding in the keywords that they used. So that's a good way to kind of look at it, but there aren't like some type of global anything. Just depends on the position, what you're applying for, and then who you are as a candidate.
Perfect. Well, it just took us right to time. Perfect answer. So I want to let everybody know that we're going to continue looking at career readiness. In here, we're going to be talking about interviewing for jobs. And we have joining us, Mary Kate's going to stay with us. Gage Jenkins is joining us. Sammy Silverman and Andy DeVito will be here to talk with us. We have a round of applause for our incredible guests. Over in room 2, so for those people who may be interested in that, we're going to be looking at social media strategy with Alyssa Jacobs, who works for USA Synchronized Swimming. Mo is going to be over there. Joey Sykes, who I see is in the room right here, the Columbus Blue Jackets. And then Denise Thompson from the University of Delaware will be over there. So we hope that you will join us in one or both. Thanks to you all so much for being here, and we will see you all soon.